Well, welcome again to another edition of A World of Hurt. We are well into the series now. We're on number 5, and today we're going to talk about some principles of leveraging hurt. If you've been with us thus far, we've had a little short introduction, and then we talked about 3 different kinds of hurts. The hurts that come into our world because of our own doing. It's what we've caused those hurts ourselves. We've brought it on ourselves. And secondly, because of the hurts of others or the actions of others, we hurt. And then thirdly, we talked about sacrificial service that often brings hurt into our lives, because when we sacrifice for others, we definitely hurt or are hurt because we've opened ourselves up to that kind of service. And today we're going to talk about principles of leveraging that hurt. So we're going to talk in kind of a more general terms. This is kind of an introduction, and then we'll get into some very specific principles in the next 3 sessions that we have. So thank you for joining us, and let's just jump into our subject today. My father used to say, if it's hard, you're doing something wrong. And that is one of the phrases that I've lived by all of my life. Now, I've found that it's not always true. Sometimes things are hard and I'm doing things right. But there are many times when I've gone about trying to fix something or do something or make something, and it turns out into a mess and it turns into something very hard, that, I'm probably doing something wrong. I'm not handling it in the right way. Whether the hurt is caused by my own willful decision, or by the injustices of others, or by my sacrificial service, there are principles that can guide our management of the hurt. It is not whether we will manage the hurt, it is how will we manage the hurt. Typically, we do one of 3 things regarding the suffering that we're experiencing. We may deny it, we may handle it poorly, making matters worse, or we may embrace the hurt and turn it into something that can enhance our lives. We could call these 3 actions no action, reaction, and response. No action occurs because we do not want to think about the causes of our pain, which often is more painful to go back and think about things and how they began than it is just to simply deny it and live with the underlying hurt. However, sometimes we don't want to consider the pain of the hurt because we contributed to that pain, and we don't want to take responsibility in the matter, whether we were the cause or how we have contributed to making matters worse. We simply live in denial, hoping that maybe it will go away, but it usually doesn't. Then there's reaction. Reaction provides often temporary relief because we react with revenge, or sometimes it's destructive, self-gratifying behaviors or addictive drama. Sometimes we react in ways that gives us some temporary relief. It kind of feels good. But once these reactive behaviors take hold, they can become extremely difficult to break. They become the fabric of one's life. They definitely make matters worse for us and for others. Then there's the embracing the hurt. This causes us to come into the light, to accept the truth, and provides time to sort out how we got to where we are. We also can see things clearly, and with counsel, we can see a way out, a new way to think and to live. This requires bravery and discipline and hope. So how do we leverage the hurt so that it works for us and not against us? The principles include truth, grace, love, understanding, honesty, trust, humility, repentance, and a new kind of dependence on the work of God in our lives. These are not mere words. These are serious strategies that must be mastered in the journey to wellness and in becoming a person who can use hurt as a way of ministering to others. In the days ahead, we're going to focus on 3 of these principles: discipline, love, and trust, in order to see how, if we master those 3 things, discipline, love, and trust, then we will be able to leverage hurt and turn something that is bad, that is darkness, into something good and into something that is light. So let's discuss these principles a little bit more. Since becoming a slave to computers, we have learned a new language. At least I have. I use words today that 30 years ago I never envisioned that I would be using, and they're just becoming a part of my nomenclature, my conversation in life. One of those words is the word default. Default. Now, the word's been around a long time, but used in a computer settings, we often set up our computers, or they come this way, to default modes. In other words, the computer, when you open up something, it will go to a certain look or it will go to a certain place in your operating system. These are default settings within your computer. Like, for instance, your browser. Your browser is what gives you the ability to go to the World Wide Web, www, in order to research things, to be able to get out there and see what is on the web and what you can participate in, what you can learn, and so forth. And so you have a particular browser that is your default browser, and you can change those settings. You can change your browser, and you will notice that it will look different. It will act different. About a year ago, in fact, I switched from one browser to another, and I can't tell you the positive difference it has made in my computer. My computer likes the new default a lot better than it did the old default. It just seems to work better. When it comes to managing the hurts in our lives, we need to change the settings in our lives. We need a new default. We need a new place to go that will serve us personally, serve others, and certainly serve God better. So I want to give you some alternatives here. Imagine if these are default settings. So, are you an optimist or a pessimist? What is your default? How can 2 people who go through the same experience nearly, and one see it positively and the other sees it negatively? Why does one panic when faced with a problem and another just find a way to figure it out? Because there's different reactions that we have. So which one are you? Are you an optimist or are you a pessimist? Do you see, as we say, the glass half full or the glass half empty? How do you look at things? What is your default? Because when you think about the hurts in your life, you look at those things either from a pessimistic point of view or you look at them from an optimistic point of view. You look at them as perhaps a defeat, or you look at them as something that's an opportunity for something good to happen. Well, let me give you another choice to make. How about paralysis versus decision? So when a hurt comes into your life, or a problem comes into your life, or suffering comes into your life, are you paralyzed by it, or do you tend to make decisions that perhaps can lead you out of the hurt that you're in? Some freeze when hurt comes along. Others wisely weigh their options and make a decision. I learned very early on that the antidote for worry is action, is work, is to do something, is to make a choice, make a decision. Even if it's a small decision, if it's a decision that is leading you to the light, leading you to a way out, leading you to a solution, then take the small decision and build upon that so that it can lead you to better decisions later on and even greater decisions later on. How about this choice? Which one is your default? Fear or faith? Which one? Fear or faith? We can live a fear-based life or we can live a faith-based life. Which browser do you want to use? Which is your default? Fear focuses on our insecurities and our limitations, and we all have them. We have insecurities, we have limitations because we're human beings. But what do we focus on? Do we focus on those insecurities, those limitations, while faith sees the endless possibilities of God who can do anything? Because faith looks beyond ourselves and looks at God who can do things we cannot do in every situation. Or how about this choice of defaults? How about anger or love? Which is your default? When a hurt comes into your life, when an injustice comes into your life, when something, quote, bad comes into your life that causes you pain, do you get angry? Or do you tend to love? Do you tend to see something positive within perhaps even the person who caused you the hurt? Some automatically respond in anger to life's problems. You just know if something happens to them that is not quite right, and it can be relatively minor, that the person is going to go into angry mode. They're going to have feelings that they have been wronged, that they have been abused, that they have been oppressed, while others tend to see loving opportunities in the situation that they find themselves in. So what is your default methods? Is it optimism or pessimism? Is it paralysis or decision? Is it fear or is it faith? Is it anger or is it love? And let me be very, very clear. You have a choice. The point is we have choices when it comes to hurts in life. If I sprain my ankle, that's going to cause me pain. But I have a choice not only about the physical treatment that I get to deal with my physical pain, but I have a choice about my attitude that I'm going to carry through the pain as it heals. I can be a difficult patient or I can be a very cooperative patient. But what do I do? How do I handle the hurt that comes into my life? You see, I have a choice. I have a choice in the matter. Let's take grief. Many of times the hurt in our life is caused by things that we lose, loved ones, or we lose property. You know, the recent hurricanes, the storms that have come in, or the fires out in California, they have caused immense pain and hurt in the lives of people because of the loss that they have experienced. And there are stages of grief that are very natural. And if you're going through those stages of grief, it's a healthy thing to do. You know, that it's normal to move through those stages in a reasonable amount of time. But counselors are looking for those who get stuck in a stage. Like they may get stuck in denial, where they're just not accepting the loss. They're not even acknowledging that they've lost the person. You know, sometimes people have lost a loved one and they still act as if the person is still around, that maybe they're on a vacation somewhere, that they're off in another part of the world, that even though they can't see them, that they know that they're there and they're going to come home one day. Well, that's a denial of death. And it's not good to get stuck in that denial. It may be temporarily a place where we go because it is the way we deal with it, but we don't want to get stuck in that place. Or we get stuck in anger because of the way the person died or the circumstances surrounding the person's death, and we get stuck in the anger sometimes. It is understandable to pass through these phases or stages of grief, but not to live there, because we have choices to make about how we can move on and manage that hurt and that pain and that grief. If God is going to be able to leverage the hurts for our good and the good of others, then we will have to cooperate with him by learning to respond in appropriate ways. A drowning person is often their very worst enemy because they do things to hinder or prevent them from being saved. Sometimes when we are hurting, we are our own worst enemies. God is trying to help us through the hurt. God is trying to show us how to leverage this hurt for good, and many times we fight God and we delay the healing process that God can bring into our lives. You know, there's a story that's found in Mark chapter 5, verses 21 through 43, about a man who had a young daughter who had a grave illness. She had a very serious illness. And he had come and he had asked Jesus to come and heal his daughter. On the way to healing his daughter, Jesus was touched by a woman. He was being pressed on every side by this crowd, and his garment was touched by this woman who was healed instantly of a bleeding issue that she had in her life. And Jesus stopped and took time to talk to this woman and to converse with her, all the time knowing that this little girl was in danger of dying. And so by the time that he got to the house where this little girl was, the little girl was dead. Now Jesus, knowing that he was going to raise her from the dead, no one else knew what he was going to do, he told the people that she was merely sleeping and everything would be okay. Now these people had already gone into a stage of grief. They were managing their grief. They were crying over her. They were showing expressions of grief. But here Jesus had come on the scene. Now Jesus was a new default method, if you will. He was a new way of looking at the pain and the grief that they were suffering. But yet they didn't understand that. And so they mocked him and they laughed at him. And they said, no, you've got it all wrong. This little girl is dead. But Jesus had to show them there was a new way of looking even at death, even at the pain and the hurt of death that comes into our lives. And he says, he took the mother and the father, and he took 3 of his apostles, and he went into the little girl, and he called her up, and she was raised from the dead. And all the people had to reassess how they looked at the hurt that they were experiencing. Jesus showed them a new way to look at it. And I would wonder how many of them changed their default method to one that was oriented to the possibilities of what Jesus could accomplish in our lives. That's just one story among many of where people were caught up in matters of hurt and pain and suffering, and they looked at it in a certain way, but they were given a new way of looking at it. They were given a new attitude so that they could manage their hurts in a different way. These are the principles of leveraging hurt. And if we learn these principles in our lives, how great can our lives be? Yes, we're going to experience hurt, and hurt hurts. But we can manage that hurt in productive ways. God can leverage that hurt in ways that helps us and helps other people, if we'll just let him do that. So I'm looking forward to getting into the 3 aspects of the hurts, and I had to limit this, so I'm going to only deal with 3 things. I'm going to deal with discipline, I'm going to deal with love, and I'm going to deal with trust, and how all of those things in the hands of God can cause us to not only overcome our hurts, but to use those hurts in productive ways. And so thank you again for joining us. I hope you will go to our YouTube channel, which is Central Sarasota Church of Christ, that you will subscribe, that you will follow the rest of the messages that we'll have here, the training, because I'm trying to train you to manage your hurts differently. You can also go to our website and access everything through our website, centralsarasota.org, and you'll find everything on our website. Again, thank you for being with us. I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to seeing you again.